Hello, everyone. I'm Jaylon Rowe, and I'm running for state rep here in the 12th Worcester District. Today, I have the pleasure of being here with Piper Wysocki, who is a Berlin resident. Hi, Piper.
Hi,
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
So you live in Berlin, your mom is the town select board member, and you were homeschooled, you just finished your sophomore year in college, and you're passionate about politics. Can you tell us more about your story and how you became civically engaged?
So I started out before the 2016 election. I was really invested in Hillary's candidacy. I wanted to be part of the first woman president because everyone assumed that was going to happen then. And that was something I didn't feel I could pass by. So I was doing some looking online and I found a field position, intern position up in New Hampshire. I was like 15 at the time. And my mom had to drive me up there and helped paint the office. That was about all I did, but I had arranged some clipboards, but I just wanted to be part of it and be there. And that was about what I thought I was going to do for activism. Because I figured everything was going okay. They didn't really need me. And then 2016 election happened. I stayed up late watching it, and then I saw everything was going wrong. And that morning, I felt like somebody had died. And I just couldn't keep feeling like that. And I was talking to my mom, and we were watching and seeing what people were going to do about this mess. And we saw that there was going to be a women's march. And my mom saw there was one in Boston. And I said, there's one in DC. And well, this is going to be historic, so we might as well be down in DC. And she told me that I was going to be driving or helping drive if we were going to be going to DC. I had never been on a highway in my life. So the second time I was on a highway was driving down to DC to go to the Women's March. And that was really an incredible experience. Like going down, there were so many people. Like in a restaurant, you see all the pussy hats and this wave of pink all around you. And it was so cool. It wasn't very interesting actually being there because it was a lot of standing around. But my dad works for AT&T, so he could tell us how many people were on the network, and the number just kept going up, and that was pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. There were so many people you couldn't actually see any of the speakers, but it was really cool. And then my mom decided she wanted to do more. This was in the middle of my junior year in high school, so I couldn't do a ton at first, but she decided to get involved with the Berlin Democratic Town Committee, and we went to the first caucus for the state convention, and there was a select board candidate who was trying to get the approval of the committee. And for various reasons, he was a very nice man, but he would not have made a very good elected official and would have had a difficult time campaigning. And one of the committee members refused to sign his nomination papers and made a comment to my mom saying, if you were to run, I would sign your papers. And then there was a bit of an intervention after the meeting suggesting my mom run for office. This was one of her first times meeting these people. And she had no idea what the position did. But this seemed like the thing we were looking for. And she went off and did quite a bit of reading and decided she would do it. And I was very excited about the whole idea of being a campaign manager, so I went off and did that. So I was balancing a very rigorous junior year in high school with randomly making up mock-up postcards and editing all of her stuff. So that was a very entertaining year. I was holding signs, and we were going and doing a bunch of other political events, and that was really cool. And then my mom won, and we had to figure out what to do with her actually in office. And I think we've done quite a good job with that, and she's really risen to the position. But that was an adventure.
What were some of like the lessons that you learned in that?
Hmm. Well,
Were
I
you
think there's, we've both learned that to run for office, you need far less than you think you do.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just need to step in and go for it. Um,
I love your story. I love the story about how the second time on the highway was to the Women's March. That is like the best story ever that you could, tell people for decades to come. And it's great that your mom jumped in and
mhm.
that you were her campaign manager. That's fantastic. So it seems like you've been really active for several years. Yes, 2016, the morning after Trump won was just like horrifically devastating for me, and just I just wouldn't stop crying. Um, and so it is really important for people to step up and to run for office and to say change is needed. So um, tell me, Piper, what issues are you passionate about, and why?
Um, it's changed over time. I kind of believe we can't do any one thing in isolation, because it all works together. And in order to get one issue, you have to get others. When I started out, probably women's rights, because I was looking at a presidency that would not serve to be me to be equal and to have the same opportunities. Um, like when I woke up on election day, I was going, "What's this going to be like when I'm where I am now, basically, and going to potentially be a few years graduating from college? What's that going to look like? The new environment." Um, got really involved in the gun violence thing after the Parkland shooting. Um, that was just sort of a breaking point for me because, well, some of my foundational experiences growing up have been hearing about school shootings, and you can only really hear about that for so long before you feel like you need to do something. So I spoke at March for Our Lives Worcester.
Mhm.
Um, that was a wild experience. I
Tell me more.
um, so we were driving somewhere. I think I was visiting one of a college on my list, and Parkland had happened at some point, and I had just this letter in my head, and my mom told me to write it down about how I was feeling and what I wanted to see change. So I wrote it down. Um, I published it in the newspaper, and one of the organizers for March for Our Lives Worcester read it and really liked it and offered me the position to speak. Um, so I went over there a few times. Sadly, I didn't get to. They had already established it pretty well, so I didn't get a chance to really work on the like March aspect of it. But I got to put a speech together. I mostly edited my letter and uh, give it in front of approximately 5,000 people, which was. And I also got to march at the front of the line, which is really cool because like there you can tell there's thousands of people behind you and you're in the front and you can hear all the chants.
Very cool. And any other speech that you give with less than 5,000 people is going to be a piece of cake now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I gave another small speech after that, and it was much more calm. Um, yeah, any group of people under this. Yeah,
Um, that so gun prevention is has been something that I've been hearing with your generation. More needs to be done, as well as environmental, more progressive policies
mhm.
to combat climate change. What are your thoughts about that?
Climate change. At my school, last semester, I think it was, we did the climate walkout, and that was really cool as well. I strongly believe in climate issues just because, like, one thing I hear a lot about my generation is that we're not like young kids these days. You're not thinking about the future. You're not planning, and I think we're planning the most because we're thinking about, do we have a place to be when we're retiring? Is there going to be a planet to live on when we're retiring? And I think that may not be a question that older generations are asking and or have had to ask.
I'm surprised about that because I feel like your generation, like you said, I'm very impressed. You guys are definitely the generation that are go-getters. You're not talkers, you're doers. You take action on issues that you really are passionate about and caring about, and I'm really impressed. Um, so, what issues are you? So you're a sophomore in college. What issues, besides environment and gun prevention, is there any other issues that college students care about that you've been hearing?
Um, I
Or
have a
those?
few I care about otherwise, but I think climate is important. I think there's also this misimpression that college students and high school students care about fundamentally different issues than any other age range. Like I was really close to the graduating seniors this year, and a lot of them are looking at, okay, I'm going to have to get an apartment. Is there going to be an affordable apartment for me? How am I going to get there? How is Corona going to affect my future? Um, what jobs am I going to get? And these are kind of questions that stay for no matter what generation. And I think making sure that there's affordable houses, that there's good transportation in the cities where a lot of these people are going, um, it's the same stuff as any other generation.
Mhm, mhm,
It's
invest.
just a little bit more pressing because we don't already have savings.
It's really important that we invest in public transportation, affordable public transportation. It's really important. Um, my husband actually takes the commuter rail, and at the Westboro commuter stop, and if you don't get there before a certain time, that there aren't parking spots available.
Hmm.
And a lot of the towns in the 12th Worcester district don't have direct access to the commuter rail, and these shuttle services are
Yeah,
really,
I,
having a shuttle service is really important. Yeah, these are all important issues that need to be dealt with. And what more would you like to see at the State House? What changes would you like to see?
first of all, I actually have a little bit of a personal story about the commuter rail situation. Is so I was supposed to have an internship down in Boston for the summer, and I was thinking about the potential of commuting, and there's nowhere really convenient to go in on the commuter rail from Berlin. It's like a 20-minute drive either direction. And also, there's the whole north-south rail link issue, and that was not never something I thought I would care about until I realized that that was actually making it really difficult for me to get anywhere in Boston from here on public transit.
Yep.
Um, could you remind me of the other part of the question?
Yeah. What changes would you like to see at the State
Oh, I have opinions about the state house.
House? Please do share.
um, so first of all, a lot of the time I want to know how my representatives have voted. So I can either say thank you or I can push to have something different happen in the future. Or even just know so that I know what happened. And I found it, I was looking one of these days and I found it, I think, figured, oh, I could just look it up online. And then I realized that I don't know the exact future, but past of that issue, but there was a vote. And pretty much every person in the state house voted not to put every vote online or even share it. So unless it's a pretty high profile vote, I have to be relying on people I know to tell me what happened. And I think it's Act on Mass has been doing some really good work raising attention to that issue and saying that we need to know how our legislators voted. And I know you signed the transparency pledge, and I'm very thankful for that because
It's important to see how people vote, your legislator, your elected officials vote, and hold them accountable for it. Absolutely. Act on Mass reached out to me almost immediately once I launched, and I was happy to sign the pledge, but I was actually quite surprised at how little that there weren't a lot of the legislators
mm-hmm.
who actually signed it. And what I'll do is I'll actually have a link to the pledge on Act on Mass so that people could see who has signed it. Um, I'll put a link in with this video.
And otherwise, I would like to see the state house being a little bit more responsive on issues rather than just waiting for an issue to become a problem. Because I feel like a lot of the legislators no longer want to be in office and are there for reasons other than actually serving the community. Well, I know a ton of fantastic legislators. There's others that I can feel have not done as well as they should. The other issue I see is people having trouble breaking in when they are new to the position and only just starting to do good work because of holdups in the system like 10 years in. And because of this, feeling like they can't run for a higher office, especially moving from representative to state senator. And we have a lot of people who potentially in the House who would want to move up to the Senate, but do not want to go through that readjustment process again. So I think leadership should do a better job of making sure that everyone who is elected to represent their constituents gets that opportunity.
Going back to what you've said about legislators, and I commit to being a full-time legislator if I'm elected, which I think is important. And it's really important to have legislators that are passionate about what they're doing, that this isn't, just a part-time gig for them. I think that's really important. That's one of the reasons why I began this race back in November, because we weren't having that. We didn't have that with our current legislator, that full-time commitment, and it's really important. So your mom is a town select board member. Would you ever want to follow in her footsteps and run for office?
Not for a very long time.
Okay.
And probably never on the local level.
Okay.
I have a great deal of respect for those who choose to involve themselves in local politics, but I don't think I ever want to be in front of my neighbors in that way. Seeing her experience with that, I think I would at very least want to be at the state representative level.
Okay, sounds good.
And I want to go do a job first, and I'm going to school to be a physics major. I want to be a physicist for a while. And I think we need scientists in government, but we also need people who have actually practiced science for a bit and who have potentially, if I say I become a policy advisor for somebody who has had experience in government for a bit first, or at least something similar.
Yeah. And so what advice do you have for someone in college who's looking to get involved in politics?
Yeah, I think I'll start at the high school level first. I think something that's important to know about my story in particular was that my mom and I have been a team, and that has given me opportunities that not every high schooler will have. But I think there's some things you can draw from that experience. First of all, I never was in any sort of starter politics position. I made sure from the get-go that I was always in the room where things were happening. And one thing that I found that is difficult about that is many of these meetings take place during the day when high schoolers can't make it. And a lot of organizational meetings for campaigns, for town committees, for anything party related takes place at times when either people who work or people who are in school cannot make it. So I was really lucky to find myself in those rooms because that's where things actually get done. And I have a great deal of respect for youth-led organizations because they do a lot of good work. But if you want to be taken seriously as an activist, sometimes you have to get in the same room as the people who are already acknowledged as activists and party operatives. And I was able to do that. And I was usually the only person under 50 in the room. Sometimes there were a few 30-year-olds. But being there and being able to say, no, this is actually what youth wants, although I feel really awkward speaking for all youth, being able to say, maybe you should listen to the person who's actually in that age range. And the other thing to know is you can get an awful lot done by yourself if you feel like it. And you don't have to limit yourself according to your age. If you have a good idea, you can go for it. this is probably one big story I want to tell otherwise, is I put on a candidate form for the third congressional candidates,
Mhm.
which was a fairly major undertaking and something that I think many would have said would have not been possible, especially for somebody my age. I was in my senior year of high school at that time.
Mhm.
Um, and there were probably 11 or 12 candidates. Um, I chose that since we had a small school stage, there were only going to be 5 on the stage, and I picked the ones I thought who were actually in the running. And I met each of them. I met their campaign staff. I said, "This is what I want to do. Are you on board for this?" And I got 5 of them to say that they would come. And then I just went around. I had my mom at my back, as I've been at hers at times. And I did phone calls. I said I found a venue. We had to switch the venue at last minute. So I had to work with the school. I wrote a ton of emails. I made posters to put at the front of the stage. Um, I worked with our town committee in order to get volunteers to do setup. Um, I worked with all the campaign staff in order to make sure that everyone would be there at the right time if they wanted to have tables at the event. Um, and there's probably more I'm forgetting. It was a lot of work.
Mhm.
Um, but I got probably 60 or 70 people in the room for the candidates. And I was able to do that. And there were a lot of people around me helping me, but that was fundamentally my work. And I think if you have a good idea, go for it. And make sure you're in the room where things actually happen. Don't don't ask for permission to be in that room. Just go.
Yes, I love that advice. Absolutely. Don't ask for permission. Piper, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your advocacy. I look forward to all the great things that you're going to be doing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take care.
You too.